The Nevada sun was setting behind the mountains when Jake Martinez heard the sputtering engine die outside his garage. He didn't look up from the transmission he was rebuilding. Broken cars found their way to his shop daily in this stretch of desert highway. But then came the frantic knocking on the metal door, desperate and uneven, like someone fighting panic. When he finally opened it, a woman stood there in an expensive dress torn at the shoulder, her dark hair disheveled, clutching car keys with shaking hands. Behind her, steam rose from the hood of a silver Mercedes, and in the dying light, Jake could see something in her eyes he recognized too well, the look of someone running from something that couldn't be outrun. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Jake Martinez had never planned to spend his life fixing other people's problems. At 32, he owned a small auto repair shop in Riverside, Nevada, a town so forgettable that most travelers only noticed it when their car started overheating on the desert highway. The shop had been his father's before him, and his grandfather's before that, passed down like a family curse of grease-stained hands and 12-hour days. The faded sign out front still read, "Martinez Auto Repair, 3 generations of trust." Though Jake often wondered if trust was worth much when you were barely scraping by. His daughter Lily had just turned 8, and every morning she would sit at the small kitchen table behind the garage, eating cereal while Jake gulped coffee, and mentally prepared for another day of diagnosing problems that seemed to multiply faster than he could solve them. She was the reason he stayed in Riverside, the reason he turned down job offers from bigger cities, the reason he convinced himself that simple was better. Lily had her mother's curious eyes and her grandfather's mechanical intuition, often wandering into the garage after school to hand Jake tools before he asked for them. The garage itself was a testament to organized chaos. Vintage car posters covered walls stained with decades of oil and hydraulic fluid. Tools hung on pegboards with religious precision, each wrench and socket in its designated place. Jake's father had taught him that a disorganized workspace reflected a disorganized mind, and in this business, clarity could mean the difference between fixing a problem and creating a bigger one. The office in the corner housed a desk buried under invoices, repair manuals, and coffee rings, along with an ancient computer that Jake used for ordering parts and keeping records that satisfied the taxman. Jake's expertise had been hard-earned through necessity rather than formal education. While other kids his age were playing video games or chasing girls, he was learning to read the language of engines, to diagnose problems by sound and feel. He could identify a failing water pump by the pitch of its whine, spot a transmission about to surrender by the way it hesitated between gears. The locals trusted him because he never oversold, never fixed what wasn't broken, and always explained exactly what was wrong in terms they could understand. But success in Riverside, Nevada was relative. Jake charged fair prices to people who often struggled to pay them. He extended credit to single mothers whose cars died the week before payday, accepted payment plans from retirees on fixed incomes, and sometimes worked for free when he knew families were choosing between car repairs and groceries. It was a business model that kept the shop afloat but never allowed Jake to get ahead. Each month was a careful balance of incoming repairs against mounting bills, with little room for error or emergency. The isolation of desert life suited Jake's temperament. After Lily's mother had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, he found comfort in the predictable rhythm of small-town existence. Sunrise brought coffee and planning the day's repairs. Mid-morning meant diagnosing problems and ordering parts. Afternoons were spent with his hands deep in engine compartments, solving mechanical puzzles that had clear solutions. Evenings belonged to Lily, helping with homework at the kitchen table, or teaching her to identify different engine sounds from the cars passing on the highway. Jake's reputation extended beyond Riverside's borders, drawing customers from Los Angeles, Vegas, who had heard about the mechanic who could resurrect vehicles that others had declared dead. He specialized in older cars that required patience and intuition rather than expensive diagnostic computers, though he had reluctantly invested in modern equipment as vehicles became increasingly computerized. His workspace bridged two worlds: classic American muscle cars that responded to mechanical sympathy, and contemporary vehicles that demanded technological expertise. The evening routine at the Martinez household was simple and comforting. After closing the garage, Jake would find Lily in the small living room, usually reading or drawing pictures of cars with impossible features like wings or tank treads. They would cook dinner together, often something simple like pasta or sandwiches, while she told him about her day at school, and he shared stories about the interesting problems he had solved. These conversations, mundane but precious, represented everything Jake valued about their quiet life. Jake's customers knew they could trust him with their vehicles and their stories. In a small town, the local mechanic often served as informal counselor, listening to people's troubles while diagnosing their automotive problems. He had heard about divorces while replacing clutches, learned about job losses while changing oil, and celebrated graduations while installing new brakes. The garage had become a confessional where people felt safe sharing their struggles, knowing Jake would listen without judgment and fix what could be fixed. The business barely generated enough profit to support Jake and Lily, but it provided something more valuable than money: purpose and stability. Every repaired vehicle represented a problem solved: a family able to get to work or school, an elderly person who could maintain their independence. Jake took pride in these small victories, finding meaning in the practical service he provided to his community. As another desert evening approached, with Lily finishing her homework and the last customer of the day picking up their repaired truck, Jake was cleaning his tools and planning tomorrow's work. He had no way of knowing that his carefully constructed, quiet life was about to be shattered by a desperate woman in a broken Mercedes, carrying secrets that would challenge everything he thought he knew about helping others. The woman standing in his doorway looked like she belonged in a magazine, not a desert auto shop. Her navy blue dress, though wrinkled and torn, was clearly expensive, cut from fabric that probably cost more than Jake made in a month. Diamond earrings caught the light from the garage's fluorescent bulbs, and her watch was the kind of Swiss timepiece that Jake had only seen in advertisements. But it was her eyes that held his attention wide with fear and exhaustion, darting constantly between his face and the highway behind her, as if expecting pursuit. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My car broke down about a mile back. I managed to coast here, but it won't start." She held up the Mercedes keys with trembling fingers. "Can you help me? I need to get back on the road tonight." Jake wiped his hands on a shop rag, studying her face. He had seen desperation before, but this was different. This woman wasn't just dealing with car trouble, she was running from something. The tear in her dress looked deliberate rather than accidental, and there was a fresh bruise forming along her collarbone that makeup hadn't quite concealed. "Let's take a look," he said simply, grabbing his diagnostic tools and following her outside to where the silver Mercedes sat steaming in the desert heat. The car was a recent Model S-Class, probably worth more than Jake's entire shop. As he popped the hood, he could smell the distinct odor of overheated coolant mixed with something else burnt electrical components. The woman hovered nearby, constantly checking her phone and glancing at the highway with nervous energy that made Jake's own anxiety spike. "What's your name?" he asked, examining the engine compartment with practiced eyes. "Anna," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "Anna Sterling." Jake noticed the slight pause, as if she was deciding whether to tell the truth. He located the problem quickly. A ruptured radiator hose had caused the engine to overheat, which in turn had fried several electrical components. It was fixable, but it would take time and parts he didn't have in stock. Well, Anna, I've got good news and bad news, Jake said, straightening up. The good news is I can fix this. The bad news is I'll need to order some parts, and with the electrical damage, it's going to take at least 2 days, maybe 3. Anna's face went pale. 2 days? No, that's impossible. I have to leave tonight. Can't you just patch it enough to get me to Las Vegas? Jake shook his head. Even if I could jury-rig something, which I can't safely do with this much electrical damage, you'd be lucky to make it 10 miles before the engine seized completely. This needs to be done right, or you'll be stranded somewhere even more remote. Then here. Anna closed her eyes, her composure finally cracking. Jake saw her shoulders shake with the effort of holding back tears, and he felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. Whatever she was running from, it was serious enough to make her consider risking her life with a temporarily patched engine. There's a motel about 10 miles back toward Vegas, Jake offered gently. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The sun set in. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. I can have your car ready by Thursday afternoon, Friday at the latest. You don't understand, Anna whispered, opening her eyes to look at him with desperate intensity. I can't stay here if he finds me. She stopped herself, as if realizing she had said too much. Jake studied her face, recognizing the signs of someone trapped in a situation they couldn't escape. He had seen it before in his customers' women who paid for repairs in cash and asked him not to call their homes, men who insisted on leaving their cars at the shop overnight, rather than parking them in their driveways. Who's looking for you? Anna? Jake asked quietly. Before she could answer, a black SUV appeared in the distance, moving fast down the highway toward them. Anna's entire body tensed, and she grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength. That's him, she gasped. That's his security team. He found me. Jake looked from the approaching vehicle to Anna's terrified face and made a decision that would change everything. Get in the garage now. He quickly closed the Mercedes hood and guided Anna through the shop door, hitting the button to lower the large bay door behind them. The SUV slowed as it passed the garage, its tinted windows making it impossible to see inside. But Jake could feel the weight of scrutiny as it paused for a long moment before continuing down the highway. Anna was shaking now, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. You don't know what you're getting into, she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. Richard Sterling doesn't just let people go. When he wants something back, he gets it, no matter what it takes. The name hit Jake like a physical blow. Richard Sterling was a household name in Nevada, the billionaire tech mogul whose Sterling Industries had transformed Las Vegas from a gambling town into a technology hub. His face was on magazine covers, his philanthropic efforts were legendary, and his business empire stretched across multiple continents. Jake had always assumed that kind of wealth came with happiness, or at least contentment. He's your husband? Jake asked, pieces falling into place. Anna nodded miserably. For 5 years. 5 years of being his perfect trophy wife, attending his charity galas, smiling for the cameras while She touched the bruise on her collarbone unconsciously. Tonight was supposed to be another one of his fundraising dinners. I was getting dressed when I overheard him on the phone with his head of security, talking about having me committed to a private facility. He's convinced everyone I'm having a nervous breakdown, that I'm a danger to myself. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert evening. Are you? Anna looked at him with a bitter smile. That's what everyone asks. My friends, my family, even my therapist, they all think I'm paranoid, imagining things. Richard is very good at making people believe what he wants them to believe. But I'm not crazy, Jake. I'm trapped. From the office, Jake heard Lily's voice calling for him. Daddy, is everything okay out there? Anna's eyes widened. You have a daughter. Oh God, shouldn't have come here. If Richard finds out I involved you and your child. Hey, Jake said firmly, moving to block her path to the door. Nobody's going to hurt my daughter. But you need to tell me exactly what we're dealing with here. How dangerous is your husband? Anna laughed, but there was no humor in it. Richard Sterling owns half the politicians in Nevada, employs some of the best security firms in the country, and has enough money to make problems disappear permanently. He doesn't get violent himself. He's too smart for that. But he has people who handle his unpleasant business. When I tried to leave him the first time, I woke up in a private psychiatric facility with no memory of how I got there. The doctors said I had suffered a psychotic break and tried to harm myself. Jake processed this information, his protective instincts warring with his common sense. Getting involved with a billionaire's domestic problems was far beyond anything he had ever dealt with. But looking at Anna's terrified face, remembering his own wife's vulnerability in her final days, he found himself unable to turn away. The first time, he asked. I've tried to leave 3 times in the past 2 years, Anna admitted. Each time, he's found me within days. He always knows where I am, who I talk to, what I buy. He says it's for my protection, but I know it's control. Tonight was different, though. I disabled the tracking device in my phone, took cash from our emergency safe, and grabbed his keys instead of mine. I thought if I could just get far enough away, maybe I could disappear. Jake glanced toward the office where Lily was presumably finishing her homework, oblivious to the danger that had literally driven up to their door. Everything in his life was simple, predictable, safe. Getting involved with Anna Sterling and her billionaire husband would destroy that carefully constructed peace. But as Anna stood there in his garage, bruised and terrified and completely alone, Jake found himself thinking about the kind of man he wanted to be, the kind of father he wanted Lily to remember. When people needed help, you helped them. It was that simple. Okay, he said finally. We'll figure this out. But first, I need you to meet my daughter and convince her you're not dangerous. Lily has good instincts about people, and if we're going to do this, I need her to trust you. Anna's relief was palpable. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means. Jake wasn't sure he wanted to know what he had just gotten himself into, but as he led Anna toward the house to meet Lily, he realized that sometimes the right choice and the safe choice were 2 entirely different things. The small kitchen behind the garage felt even smaller with Anna Sterling standing in it. She looked impossibly out of place among the mismatched chairs and cheerful drawings Lily had taped to the refrigerator. Jake watched his daughter's reaction carefully as she looked up from her math homework, her brown eyes taking in the elegant stranger with the torn dress and frightened expression. Lily, this is Anna, Jake said gently. Her car broke down and she needs our help. Lily tilted her head, studying Anna with the unfiltered curiosity that only children possessed. You look scared, she observed matter-of-factly. Are you running? Away from something bad? Anna knelt down to Lily's eye level, her voice soft when she spoke. Yes, I am. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups try to hurt them for it. Your daddy is helping me fix my car so I can get somewhere safe. Like when Tommy Henderson's mom had to leave his dad because he was mean to her. Lily asked, referencing a classmate whose family situation had been the subject of much whispered adult conversation around town. Jake felt his chest tighten. He had tried to shield Lily from the harsh realities of the world, but in a small town, children inevitably overheard things they shouldn't. Something like that, sweetheart, he said. Lily nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by reaching out to take Anna's hand. You can stay in the guest room. Daddy fixed it up after Mama died, but we don't use it much. It has clean sheets and everything. Anna's eyes filled with tears at the simple kindness. Thank you, Lily. That's very generous of you. Are you hungry? Lily continued, already moving toward the refrigerator. Daddy makes really good grilled cheese sandwiches, and we have tomato soup. It's not fancy, but it tastes good when you're sad. Jake watched this exchange with amazement. His 8-year-old daughter had somehow cut through all the complexity and danger of Anna's situation to focus on the most basic human needs, shelter and comfort. It was a lesson in compassion that humbled him. I should call the motel, Anna sighed, straightening up. I don't want to impose on your family. You're not imposing, Jake said firmly. And honestly, staying here might be safer than a motel. If your husband is looking for you, he'll check public accommodations first. A mechanic's house in the middle of nowhere probably isn't on his radar. Anna nodded, recognizing the logic. But I need to pay you. For the car repairs, for letting me stay here. I have cash. Jake shook his head. We'll figure out the money later. Right now, let's focus on keeping you safe and getting your car fixed. As they settled into the evening routine, Jake found himself observing Anna more closely. Despite her obvious exhaustion and fear, she insisted on helping with dinner, moving around the small kitchen with surprising ease. She listened attentively as Lily chattered about school and her friends, asking thoughtful questions that drew more stories from the normally shy child. You're good with kids, Jake commented as they cleaned up after dinner, Lily having been excused to watch television in the living room. Anna smiled sadly. I always wanted children. Richard and I tried for the first few years of our marriage, but nothing happened. He had me undergo extensive fertility testing, consultations with specialists, all very expensive and thorough. When the doctors couldn't find anything wrong, he suggested the problem might be stress-related. He thought I was too high-strung to conceive. Jake heard the pain in her voice and chose his words carefully. Maybe the problem wasn't stress. Maybe your body was just smart enough to know it wasn't a safe environment for a child. Anna looked at him with surprise, as if the thought had never occurred to her. I never thought of it that way. Bodies are smarter than we give them credit for, Jake said, echoing something his wife had once told him during her pregnancy with Lily. They protect us in ways we don't always understand. From the living room came the sound of Lily's favorite cartoon, a comforting background noise that made the house feel normal despite the extraordinary circumstances. Anna leaned against the kitchen counter, some of the tension finally leaving her shoulders. I keep expecting to wake up from this, she said quietly. 3 hours ago, I was getting dressed for another one of Richard's charity events, practicing my smile in the mirror. Now I'm in a stranger's kitchen, planning to disappear completely from the life I've known for 5 years. Do you regret it? Jake asked. Anna considered the question seriously. I regret that it took me this long. I regret that I let him convince me I was imagining things, that his control was protection, that his jealousy was love. But leaving? No, I don't regret that. Jake refilled their coffee cups, settling into the chair across from her. What changed tonight? What made this time different? Anna's expression darkened. I found something. Documents in his private safe that I wasn't supposed to see. Richard has been having me watched for months, not just by security cameras or tracking my phone, but by private investigators who've been following me, photographing me, documenting everything I do. He has pictures of me talking to the grocery store clerk, meeting friends for lunch, even visiting my therapist. She paused, her hands trembling slightly around her coffee mug. But that wasn't the worst part. There were medical consultation, reports, discussions with psychiatric facilities about long-term involuntary commitment procedures. He's been building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent, to take complete control of my life legally. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. That's why you can't go to the police, if he's already started legal proceedings. Exactly. He's too smart to do anything obviously illegal. Everything he's done has been technically within his rights as my husband, at least according to the lawyers he's consulted. The surveillance, the medical consultations, even controlling my access to money. It's all legal if he can prove I'm mentally unstable. And the physical abuse? Anna touched the bruise on her collarbone unconsciously. He's careful about that too. Never anything that shows, never anything that would photograph well. And always with a plausible explanation. I fell down the stairs. I walked into a door. I had another one of my episodes. The private medical staff he employs are very discreet and well compensated for their discretion. Jake struggled to process the level of calculated cruelty Anna was describing. Richard Sterling's public image was that of a philanthropic businessman, someone who donated millions to children's charities and women's shelters. The irony was sickening. How long has this been going on? It started gradually, Anna said, staring into her coffee. The first year of our marriage was wonderful, or at least I thought it was. Richard was attentive, protective, generous. He paid off my student loans, bought me beautiful clothes, took me on incredible vacations. I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. She laughed bitterly. Then small things started changing. He'd get upset if I made plans without consulting him first. He'd question my friendships, suggesting that people were only interested in me because of his money. He hired a personal shopper, so I wouldn't have to deal with the stress of shopping alone. At first, it felt like being cherished. Later, I realized it was being isolated. When did you first try to leave? About 18 months ago. I had started to feel like I was disappearing, like I couldn't remember who I had been before Richard. I packed a bag while he was traveling and drove to my sister's house in California. He found me within 6 hours. Anna's voice became flat, emotionless as she continued. He arrived with a team of medical professionals and my personal physician, all very concerned about my mental state. They said I had been acting erratically, that leaving without notice was evidence of a psychological break. My sister actually believed them. Richard can be very convincing, and I hadn't told her about the problems in our marriage. They sedated you? Mild tranquilizers to help with the anxiety, they called it. I woke up 3 days later in a private psychiatric facility with no memory of how I got there and doctors telling me I had suffered a nervous breakdown. Richard was so understanding, so supportive, visiting every day and bringing flowers. Jake felt sick. How did you get out? Richard decided I was better after 2 weeks of therapy and medication. The doctors all agreed that with proper support and continued treatment, I could return home safely. Of course, the support included 24-hour nursing staff and a revised medication regimen that left me feeling like I was living underwater. You've been on psychiatric medication since then? Anna nodded. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, mood stabilizers. Richard managed all of it through our private physician. The doses were adjusted frequently, always with the explanation that we were fine-tuning my treatment. Looking back, I realized the medication levels were calibrated to keep me compliant rather than healthy. How did you stop taking them? Very gradually, over the past 3 months. I started pretending to take the pills but actually disposing of them. The withdrawal was terrible headaches, nausea, confusion. But as the fog lifted, I started remembering things more clearly, feeling emotions more intensely. I realized how much of myself I had lost. Jake processed this information, his respect for Anna growing. Breaking free from that level of psychological and chemical control required incredible strength and determination. And tonight was your chance? Richard had a conference call with investors from Tokyo. He always takes those calls in his private office with the door locked, and they usually last at least 2 hours. I knew the combination to his safe because I had watched him open it dozens of times, though he thought I was too medicated to notice or remember. Anna pulled a small flash drive from her purse. I copied everything, the surveillance reports, the medical consultations, the legal documents about having me committed, financial records showing payments to the investigators and the psychiatric facility. It's all here. Jake stared at the tiny device that contained evidence of such systematic abuse. That's incredibly dangerous to have, I know. But it's also the only proof that I'm not crazy, that everything I've experienced has been real. Without this, I'm just another unstable wife making accusations against her powerful husband. From the living room, Lily called out that her show was over and she was ready for bed. Jake looked at Anna, seeing the exhaustion in her face and knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and dangers. "We'll figure this out," he said quietly. "But right now you need sleep. Real sleep without worrying about being watched, or medicated or monitored." Anna's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know how to thank you, both of you. I haven't felt safe in so long that I had forgotten what it felt like." As Jake tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, Anna is really scared, isn't she?" "Yes, sweetheart, she is." "Are you going to protect her like you protect me?" Jake kissed his daughter's forehead, struck once again by her intuitive understanding of complex situations. "I'm going to try, Lily. We're going to help her find somewhere safe." "Good," Lily said sleepily. "She seems nice. And she didn't treat me like a little kid when I asked her questions." Later, as Jake checked the locks on all the doors and windows, he found Anna standing at the guest room window, looking out at the desert highway. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Just wondering how long it will take him to figure out where I am," she replied. "Richard has resources I can't even imagine. Private investigators, security firms, technology companies. If he wants to find me, he will. Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Jake said. "But for tonight, you're safe." Anna turned from the window, and for the first time since she had arrived, Jake saw something other than fear in her eyes. It wasn't quite hope, but it was the possibility of hope, and sometimes that was enough to get through another day. The next morning arrived with the kind of brilliant desert sunrise that made the previous night's drama feel almost surreal. Jake woke early, as was his habit, and found Anna already in the kitchen, fully dressed and staring out the window at her. DMAGED Mercedes. She had clearly been awake for hours, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and her borrowed clothes, one of Jake's old flannel shirts over her expensive dress, somehow making her look more real than she had the night before. "Coffee's fresh," she said without turning around. "I hope you don't mind that I helped myself to your kitchen." Jake poured himself a mug, noting that Anna had somehow managed to make coffee that was actually better than his usual morning brew. "You didn't sleep much." Old habits. Richard insisted on early morning schedules. 5 a.m. workouts, 6 a.m. breakfast meetings, 7 a.m. departure for whatever public appearance was on the calendar. Anna's voice carried a bitter edge. "I've been waking up at 4:30 for so long that my body doesn't remember how to sleep in." Through the kitchen window, Jake could see Lily in the backyard, already dressed for school and throwing a tennis ball for their neighbor's dog who had wandered over for his daily visit. The normalcy of the scene contrasted sharply with the tension he could feel radiating from Anna. "We should get started on your car," Jake said. "The sooner it's running, the sooner you can get moving again." Anna nodded, but Jake noticed her hands were shaking slightly as she gripped her coffee mug. What if he's already contacted the police? What if he's reported the car stolen? Jake had been wondering the same thing. "Is the Mercedes registered in your name?" "No, everything was in Richard's name. The house, the cars, even my credit. Cards were technically his accounts with me listed as an authorized user. He said it was for tax purposes, but now I realize it was another form of control." "Then we'll deal with that if it becomes a problem," Jake said, though privately he was beginning to understand the scope of what they were up against. Richard Sterling hadn't just been abusive. He had been methodical in creating a situation where Anna had no legal standing, no independent resources, and no way to prove her own version of events. Lily bounded through the kitchen door, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her face bright with morning energy. "Anna, you're still here. Does that mean you're staying longer?" "Just until my car is fixed, sweetie," Anna replied, and Jake was struck by how naturally she interacted with his daughter. There was no condescension in her voice, no artificial cheerfulness that adults often used with children. She spoke to Lily as if she were simply a shorter adult deserving of the same respect. "Can you help me with something before school?" Lily asked, digging through her backpack. "We're supposed to draw a picture of our family, but I don't know how to draw Mama since she's not here anymore." Jake felt his chest tighten. These moments still caught him off guard, the casual way grief could insert itself into ordinary conversations. He was about to suggest that Lily draw a picture in a frame or maybe a rainbow to represent her mother's memory, but Anna spoke first. "What did your mama love most?" Anna asked, kneeling down to Lily's level. Lily considered this seriously. "Music. She played piano and she used to sing when she cooked dinner. Daddy says she had the most beautiful voice in the world." "Then maybe you could draw musical notes floating around your family," Anna suggested. "That way your mama's love is still part of the picture, even if we can't see her." Lily's face lit up with understanding. "Like her music is still with us." "That's perfect." She hugged Anna impulsively before running off to finish getting ready for school. Jake stared at Anna with something approaching awe. Thank you. I never know how to handle those moments. "I lost my mother when I was 12, Anna explained quietly. "People always wanted me to move on or let go, but what I really needed was help figuring out how to carry her with me. Lily doesn't need to forget her mother, she needs to find ways to include her in her life." It was another glimpse into the person Anna had been before Richard Sterling, before the isolation and medication and systematic erosion of her identity. Jake found himself wondering what else had been buried under years of psychological manipulation. After Lily left for school, Jake and Anna walked out to examine the Mercedes in full daylight. The damage was actually worse than Jake had initially thought. The overheating had warped several engine components, and the electrical system had more fried circuits than he had realized in the dim garage lighting the night before. "This is going to take more time than I estimated," Jake admitted, running his hands through the damaged wiring. "Maybe 4 or 5 days, and that's if I can get all the parts delivered quickly." Anna's face went pale. "Richard will have found me by then. He has to know I took his car, and there are only so many routes out of Las Vegas. It's just a matter of time before his people check every auto repair shop between here and the California border." Jake considered this, weighing their options. "What if we make it look like the car was never here? I'll tow it into the back bay, out of sight from the road. If anyone comes looking, I'll tell them I haven't seen you." "You'd lie to protect me?" "I'd lie to protect anyone running from an abuser," Jake said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. If Sterling's people are as thorough as you say, they'll eventually check everywhere. We need a plan for what happens when they show up." Anna wrapped her arms around herself, despite the growing heat of the desert morning. "Maybe I should just leave. Find another way to get out of town. I don't want to put you and Lily in danger. And go where? With what money and what transportation?" Jake shook his head. "Running blindly isn't going to work. You need time to plan, to figure out your next move. And your car needs to be fixed properly, or you'll just break down somewhere else, probably somewhere more isolated than this." As if to emphasize his point, a police cruiser appeared on the highway, moving slowly in their direction. Both Jake and Anna tensed, but the patrol car continued past without slowing, the officer inside seemingly focused on something else entirely. "Come on," Jake said, guiding Anna back toward the garage. "Let's get your car hidden, and then we need to talk about what happens next." Working together, they managed to push the Mercedes into the rear bay of the garage, behind a partition that Jake used for storage. Covered with a tarp and surrounded by old car parts and equipment, It would be invisible to anyone giving the shop a casual inspection. Now what? Anna asked. Now we figure out your exit strategy, Jake replied, pulling out a worn atlas from his desk drawer. Where were you planning to go when you left Las Vegas? Anna stared at the map as if she had never seen one before. I don't know. I just wanted to get away. I thought maybe California or Arizona, somewhere he couldn't find me. Jake realized that Anna's escape had been purely reactive. She had been running from something rather than towards something. It was an understandable response to trauma, but it wasn't sustainable. You need a destination, Jake explained. Somewhere specific with a plan for how you'll survive once you get there. Do you have friends or family who would help you? My sister in California, maybe, but Richard knows about her. My college friends. Anna trailed off. Most of them dropped away after I married Richard. He was very good at making social plans that conflicted with their invitations or scheduling trips whenever they wanted to visit. After a while, they stopped trying to maintain contact. Jake felt a familiar anger building in his chest. The systematic isolation Anna described was textbook abuse, designed to make the victim completely dependent on their abuser. What about before you were married? Did you have a career? Any professional connections? I managed an art gallery in San Francisco, Anna said, and for the first time her voice carried a note of pride. It was a small space, but we represented some incredible emerging artists. I loved that job, finding new talent, helping artists connect with collectors, organizing exhibitions that brought people together around beautiful work. Could you do that again? In a different city? Anna's expression grew wistful. I used to think so, but that was 5 years ago. The art world moves quickly, and I've been out of it completely. Richard thought gallery work was beneath me. He preferred that I focus on his charitable foundation work and social obligations. Jake heard the self-doubt in her voice and recognized it as another legacy of psychological abuse. Skills don't disappear just because you haven't used them recently, and passion definitely doesn't expire. You really think I could go back to that life? I think you could build whatever life you want, Jake said. But first, you need to get far enough away from Richard to have that choice. They spent the next hour poring over the atlas, identifying potential destinations and routes. Anna had about $3,000 in cash from Richard's emergency safe, enough to get established somewhere, but not enough for long-term security. Jake suggested smaller cities rather than major metropolitan areas, places where she could blend in more easily while rebuilding her life. What about Portland? Jake pointed to the Oregon city on the map. Good art scene, reasonable cost of living, far enough from Las Vegas that Sterling's immediate resources might not reach. Anna studied the route from Nevada to Oregon, tracing the highways with her finger. It would take 2 days of driving, maybe 3 if I stopped to rest. And you'd need to change your appearance, maybe get different identification eventually. Jake paused, realizing how far they were getting into criminal territory. Though I'm not sure how to arrange that kind of thing. I might know someone, Anna said quietly. Before I married Richard, I volunteered at a women's shelter. There was a coordinator there who helped women disappear when their situations became dangerous. She had connections, resources for starting over with new identities. Jake felt a spark of hope. Could you contact her? Maybe, if she's still there, if she remembers me, if she's willing to help someone whose husband isn't obviously dangerous in traditional ways. Anna's doubt was palpable. Richard never hit me in front of witnesses, never made obvious threats. My situation doesn't look like typical domestic abuse. Abuse doesn't have to look typical to be real, Jake said firmly. What Richard has done to you, the isolation, the medication, the surveillance, the threats of involuntary commitment, that's abuse, Anna. It's sophisticated and calculated, but it's still abuse. Anna looked at him with something approaching wonder. You're the first person who said that without qualifications or conditions. Everyone else wants to know what I did to provoke him, or why I didn't leave sooner, or whether I'm sure I'm not overreacting. You don't provoke someone into systematic psychological torture, Jake replied. And you're leaving now, which is what matters. The sound of a vehicle approaching made them both freeze. Through the garage windows, Jake could see a black sedan pulling into his driveway, moving with the deliberate slowness of people who were surveying rather than simply arriving. Get in the house, Jake whispered. Stay away from the windows. Anna's face had gone white, but she moved quickly toward the connecting door to the residence. If they ask about me, I've never seen you, Jake assured her. Your car was never here. As the sedan doors opened and two men in expensive suits stepped out, Jake wiped his hands on a shop rag and walked outside to meet them, his heart pounding but his expression carefully neutral. The game of cat and mouse had officially begun. The first man was tall and lean, with silver hair and the kind of posture that suggested military training. His companion was younger, broader, with calculating eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of Jake's property. Both wore sunglasses despite the early morning hour, and their suits were too expensive and too formal for the Nevada desert. Mr. Martinez? The older man asked, his voice carrying a slight accent that Jake couldn't place. I'm David Chun, private security consultant. This is my associate, Mr. Brooks. We're investigating a missing person case, and wondered if we could ask you a few questions. Jake kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. Sure, I guess, though I don't know how much help I can be. Pretty quiet out here most of the time. Chun pulled out his phone, showing Jake a professional headshot of Anna Knott, the frightened, disheveled woman who had arrived at his garage, but Anna as she appeared in her carefully constructed public life. Perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, wearing what looked like designer evening wear. She was smiling, but Jake could now see what he had missed before. The smile never reached her eyes. Anna Sterling disappeared from her Las Vegas home yesterday evening, Chun continued. She's been struggling with some mental health issues lately, and her family is very concerned about her well-being. Her vehicle was taken without permission, and we're checking with auto repair shops in case she experienced mechanical difficulties. Jake studied the photo, letting a moment pass before shaking his head. Haven't seen her. What kind of car are we talking about? Silver Mercedes S-Class, recent model. Brooks spoke for the first time, his voice rougher than his partner's. Expensive vehicle. The kind that stands out in a place like this. Yeah, that would definitely stand out, Jake agreed. But like I said, haven't seen anything like that. Most of my customers drive pickups or older sedans. Working people, you know. Chun's expression remained pleasant, but Jake caught him glancing toward the garage bays. Would you mind if we took a quick look around? Just to be thorough in our report. Jake felt his stomach tighten, but he shrugged casually. Sure, no problem, though there's not much to see. Just working on a transmission rebuild and an oil change. He led them through the main garage, pointing out the various vehicles in different stages of repair. Chun and Brooks moved with practiced efficiency, their eyes taking in every detail while maintaining an air of casual interest. Jake was grateful that he had thought to hide Anna's Mercedes in the back bay, behind the partition. Nice setup you have here, Chun observed, examining the organized tool displays. Family business? 3 generations, Jake replied, falling into the cover story he had rehearsed in his head. My grandfather started it, my dad expanded it, and now it's mine and my daughter's inheritance, I suppose. Your daughter, Brooks said, and something in his tone made Jake's protective instincts flare. She live here with you? She's at school, Jake said carefully. But yes, it's just the two of us. Chun had wandered over to the office area, his gaze lingering on the coffee cups on Jake's desk. Jake realized with a spike of anxiety that there were 2 cups, both recently used. His mind raced for an explanation that wouldn't raise suspicions. "You mentioned mental health issues," Jake said, redirecting their attention. "This woman, she dangerous or something?" "Not dangerous exactly," Chun replied, still studying the office setup, "but she's been having some episodes lately. Paranoid delusions, erratic behavior. Her husband is very worried that she might hurt herself, intentionally or accidentally." Jake nodded sympathetically while internally recoiling at the smooth way Chun delivered what Jake now knew were lies. "That's rough. Hope you find her safe." "We will," Brooks said with certainty that sounded more like a threat than reassurance. "Mr. Sterling has considerable resources at his disposal. It's really just a matter of time." The men completed their inspection and prepared to leave, but Chun paused at the garage entrance. "You said you have a daughter. What's her name?" Every parental instinct Jake possessed screamed danger. "Lily," he said, immediately regretting giving them any information about his child. "Pretty name," Chun smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes any more than Anna's smile had in the photograph. "She's lucky to have a father who works so hard to take care of her." After the sedan disappeared down the highway, Jake stood in his driveway for several minutes, making sure they were really gone before returning to the house. He found Anna in the kitchen, pressed against the wall beside the window where she could see out without being seen. "They're gone," Jake said, but Anna's posture remained rigid with fear. "For now," she whispered, "but they'll be back. Richard never gives up, and those men, they're not just security consultants. I've seen them before, at Richard's business meetings. They handle his special projects." Jake poured himself a cup of coffee with hands that were less steady than he would have liked. What kind of special projects? The kind where business rivals suddenly decide to sell their companies, or where investigative journalists lose interest in stories about Sterling Industries, or where former employees forget what they saw during their time with the company. Anna's voice was flat, emotionless. "Richard doesn't get his hands dirty, but he employs people who do." The implications of what Anna was saying sent a chill through Jake. He had assumed they were dealing with a wealthy, controlling husband, not someone with connections to actual criminals. "Anna, if these people are as dangerous as you're suggesting, then helping me was probably the worst decision you've ever made," Anna finished. "I know. I tried to warn you, but I was desperate, and you were kind. And I wasn't thinking clearly about the consequences for you and Lily." Jake sat down across from her, forcing himself to think logically despite the fear coursing through his system. "Okay, so we're in deeper than I realized. That doesn't change the fact that you need help, and it doesn't change my decision to provide it. But we need a better plan." "The plan should be for me to leave immediately," Anna said. "On foot if necessary. Every minute I stay here puts you and Lily in more danger." "And where exactly would you go on foot in the Nevada desert?" Jake countered. "You'd be dead from exposure before you made it 10 miles, assuming Sterling's people didn't find you first." Anna's composure finally cracked, and she buried her face in her hands. "I don't know what to do. I thought I was so smart, so prepared. I had evidence, cash, a plan to disappear. But I didn't really understand what I was up against, did I? Richard isn't just going to let me walk away and start over somewhere. He's going to hunt me down and drag me back, and anyone who helps me is going to suffer for it." Jake watched her struggle with despair and felt an unexpected surge of determination. Maybe it was because Anna reminded him of his late wife, intelligent, creative, but trapped by circumstances beyond her control. Maybe it was because he couldn't stand the thought of Lily growing up in a world where powerful men could destroy women with impunity. Or maybe it was simply because walking away from someone who needed help wasn't something he could live with. "What if we don't run?" Jake said suddenly. Anna looked up at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" "What if instead of trying to hide from Sterling, we expose him? You said you have evidence on that flash drive. What if we make sure that evidence gets to people who can actually do something about it? Like who? The police? Richard has connections throughout law enforcement. The media? He owns shares in half the news outlets in Nevada, and the other half depend on advertising from his companies. Anna shook her head. I've thought about going public, but Richard has already laid the groundwork to discredit me. Anyone I try to tell will just see a mentally unstable woman making wild accusations against her successful husband. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking, what about the FBI? If Sterling is using criminal methods to silence people, that's federal jurisdiction. Maybe, Anna said doubtfully. But I'd need more than just my word and some surveillance reports. I'd need evidence of actual crimes, not just abusive behavior. Then we get that evidence, Jake said. We make Sterling come to us, and we document everything he does. We turn the tables and make him the one who's being watched and recorded. Anna stared at him as if he had suggested they declare war on a foreign country. Jake, you're talking about deliberately provoking a man who has people like Chun and Brooks working for him. That's not brave. It's suicidal. Is it more suicidal than trying to run from him forever? Jake challenged. Because that's your alternative, Anna. Even if you manage to disappear, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, never knowing if today is the day he finds you. Is that really living? Anna was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the desert landscape. When she finally spoke, her voice was stronger than it had been since she arrived. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we set a trap, Jake said. We let Sterling think he's found you, but we control the circumstances. We record everything, the threats, the coercion, maybe even criminal activity if we're lucky. Then we take that evidence to federal authorities, the media, anyone who will listen. And if it doesn't work? If Sterling is smarter than we are, or if his people decide to handle the situation more permanently? Jake met her eyes steadily. Then at least we go down fighting instead of running. And maybe, just maybe, we create enough noise that other people in your situation will have a better chance of getting help. Anna considered this, and Jake could see her weighing fear against the possibility of actually being free. It would be incredibly dangerous for all of us. Yes, it would, Jake agreed. But Lily deserves to grow up in a world where bullies don't always win, and you deserve a chance at a real life. Sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to make them face consequences. You realize you're talking about going up against one of the most powerful men in Nevada with nothing but a small-town mechanic shop and a lot of hope? Jake smiled grimly. David faced Goliath with less. And sometimes the underestimated opponents are the most dangerous ones. Anna was quiet for several more minutes, but Jake could see something changing in her expression. The helpless fear was being replaced by something harder, more determined. If we're going to do this, we need help. Real help from people who know how to handle situations like this. The woman you mentioned from the women's shelter. Could she help with more than just new identification? Maybe. Sarah Martinez, yes. I know, same last name as you. Pure coincidence. She used to be FBI before she started working with domestic violence victims. She might know people, procedures, ways to make sure evidence is properly collected and preserved. Jake felt a spark of genuine hope. Can you contact her? I can try. But Jake, if we do this, there's no going back. Once we start actively working against Richard, we're committed to seeing it through to the end, whatever that might be. I understand, Jake said. And Anna? For what it's worth, I think you're a lot stronger than you realize. Most people would have given up already, but you're still here, still fighting. That takes courage. Anna smiled, and for the first time since she had arrived, it was a real smile that reached her eyes. I hope you're right, because we're about to find out just how much courage I actually have. As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of a school bus announced Lily's return from school. Jake and Anna exchanged glances, both realizing that their decision would affect an innocent 8-year-old who had no say in the matter. "She has a right to know," Anna said quietly. "If we're putting her at risk, she should understand why." Jake nodded, though the thought of explaining the situation to Lily made his stomach churn. She's tougher than she looks. Her mother's death taught her that the world can be dangerous, but it also taught her that family stands together no matter what. Lily burst through the kitchen door with her usual after-school energy, dropping her backpack and immediately focusing on Anna. "You're still here. Does that mean your car is really broken?" "Something like that," Anna replied. "But your dad and I have been talking, and we might need your help with something important." Lily's eyes lit up with the prospect of being included in adult business. "What kind of help?" Jake knelt down to his daughter's level, choosing his words carefully. "Remember how we talked about Anna being scared of someone who wants to hurt her? Well, we're going to try to make sure that person can't hurt anyone else, but it might be dangerous for us too." Lily's expression grew serious, her 8-year-old mind processing the implications. "Like when the police catch bad guys on TV." "Sort of like that," Jake confirmed. "But we wanted to ask you how you felt about it, because if we do this, we all have to be very brave and very careful." Lily looked between her father and Anna, her young face showing a maturity that always surprised Jake. "Will it help, Anna? Be safe forever?" "We hope so," Anna said softly. "Will it help other people who are scared too?" "Possibly," Jake answered. Lily nodded firmly. "Then we should do it. Mama always said that helping people was the most important thing we could do, even if it was scary." Jake felt his eyes well up with pride and terror in equal measure. His daughter had just committed them all to a course of action that could end in disaster, but she had done it for all the right reasons. "Okay then," Jake said, standing up and looking at Anna. "I guess we're really doing this." Anna nodded, pulling out her phone to begin the process of contacting her former shelter. "Coordinator Sarah Martinez, if you're still out there, I really hope you remember me, because I'm about to ask you for the biggest favor of my life." As Anna began making the call that would either save them or destroy them, Jake looked out at the desert highway where Chun and Brooks had disappeared hours earlier. Somewhere out there, Richard Sterling was mobilizing resources that Jake couldn't even imagine, all focused on reclaiming control over the woman sitting at his kitchen table. But for the first time since Anna had arrived, Jake felt like they had a real chance. Not because their plan was foolproof or because they had superior resources, but because they had something Sterling didn't: people who genuinely cared about each other and were willing to sacrifice for a principle larger than themselves. The war for Anna's freedom was about to begin, and Jake Martinez, small-town mechanic, was about to discover whether ordinary people could still triumph over extraordinary evil in a world where money and power seemed to rule everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.